I'd like a motion to accept policy for first reading and adoption, deletion, or revision on A1.
So moved.
Mrs.
Second.
Becker, Mrs. Shaw, is there any discussion? Mr. McAvoy.
Yes, I was the one who tabled this about a month ago because I needed to not only spend some more time reading these legislative mandates that came out of Trenton, and I was a little bit concerned, no, I was very concerned regarding the whole data bank of how we acquire policy. I draw the analogy to like a style manual that you would use in school. So you're working on a project, and you just go right to the style, and zippo, there's the answer. And so with regard to Strauss being the equivalent of this, I didn't feel that just the policy alone was a way in which we were going to be dealing with these situations that occur with our staff. And I just wanted Dr. Valesky or Mr. Juliana to clarify for the general public, because the public comes in and picks up the agenda and sees the policies that are up for adoption. But there's so much more to staff member substance abuse, support staff substance abuse, drug and alcohol problems, and I know that our policies must be far more defined than what we see in this one-stop shopping system that I see coming out of Strauss, which is mandated by the state. So could you just clarify for the general public how, I don't expect you, putting you on the spur of the moment here, to recite handbook information, but just some general guidelines regarding these situations that could result in some serious problems for our staff members.
Well, Mr. McAvoy, do you want us to talk specifically about these substance abuse policies, or the actual application of these policies?
I just want the public to know that we're doing far more for our,
absolutely.
We are doing far more than what this packet says.
Correct. And actually, when you reference Strauss-Esme, it is a template of recommended policies and sometimes mandated policies that go through a very comprehensive review by the central office team and then through the policy committee, which just happened to meet prior to this meeting tonight once again for continuous review of our policies and making sure those policies are updated. But I think foremost is the amount of service that we make sure our policies have with support of our individual employees and making sure they get the support they need to return to the job. And that's always our intent. We're employee focused.
Mr. Juliana,
Did you want to rescind you?
I think the aspect of the policy that Mr. McAvoy may be interested in is the employee assistance program aspect, for which no employee, as long as I've been here, has ever been left without support. And oftentimes there are folks that need additional support going through a difficult time, whether through whatever kind of substance abuse issues that may exist, and they're provided with the support and the references and to help them through that time and come back and be employees with us.
And all of these procedures, protocols, policies are outlined in the handbook that is distributed to all of our contractually obligated employees?
It is available online, not distributed anymore, but available online.
Okay.
And our very comprehensive HR department is always available to counsel individuals in complete confidence and give them the most appropriate direction and where the resources, where they can tap into the resources they need.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? I need a roll call on that.
Yes. Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mrs. Chu?
Yes.
Mrs. Howard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mr. McAvoy?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
And Dr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I'd like a motion for item A2, acceptance of gifts, St. Bart's Buffaloes Club.
So moved.
Mrs.
Second?
Becker, Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker.
I just wanted to thank the St. Bart Buffaloes Club for this very generous donation of an ice machine for placement at the East Brunswick High School Stadium. It will absolutely benefit our school's athletes and other users of the facility, and we thank them.
Any other comments? I'll just ditto that. Anytime somebody from the community does something like that, it should be well recognized, and I thought that should be separated out. So we do appreciate that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions. Make a motion for item A3, approval and submission of merit goals to the Middlesex County Executive Superintendent of Schools.
So moved.
Mrs.
Second.
Becker, Mrs. Shaw, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Are there any items in B that need to be combined? Because I'd like to combine items B1 through B, I believe, 7. They do?
To be separated. You asked if they want to be combined.
Oh, separated, I'm sorry. Is there any item B1 through B6 that needs to be separated? Then I'd like to have a motion for items B1 through B6.
So moved.
Mrs. Becker and Mrs. Shaw. Is there any discussion?
I have the,
Oh, I'm sorry.
under item B2, where we're taking a look at special education out-of-district placements, the last student mentioned was formerly in a residential placement, and I wondered if Mr. Figueroa could tell us, in general terms, how many residential placements we actually have.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. We can get that information.
Would
for
you guess that it's fewer than 5 in a school
Yeah.
year?
Yes.
And this student apparently is being placed into a new program that is not a residential program.
Mhm.
And I'm basing that assumption on the fact that the tuition is considerably lower than it is for many of the other programs that our kids go into. So when a student is going between a residential placement and a non-residential placement, are there certain benchmarks that are student, whether it's their social worker or case manager or whatever, that they're taking a look at that would say, okay, this student will have the capacity to succeed in a non-residential placement?
Each student's case manager is involved in that continuum. As you know, in most of these cases, the state does place a student in these residential areas, but our child study teams work with them and do look at where that student might be most successful, and that's on a continual basis.
Okay.
That's continually monitored.
All right, thank you. In B5, I'm getting there. Okay. This is for approval of a contract with ABA for You. And my question is that when an IEP calls for behavioral therapy, are all 4 of the elements that are listed with the hourly rates required? So in other words, we see listed ABA therapy at $70 an hour, then we have program coordination at $90 an hour, BCBA supervision at 110 per hour, and then assessment at 125 per hour. So does each student that requires ABA therapy require program coordination, the supervision, and the assessment?
And that depends on the student's individual needs and their IEP. There are going to be students that might require more care than others, and these particular ones that we have listed are as needed as resources. These are not ones that we would necessarily use initially, but these are additional resources just to make sure that we have those.
So that if they are needed, that
They
they're
can be
available
used.
to be used, but they wouldn't necessarily be
Right.
required. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on those items? We'll take a roll call.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mrs. Chu?
Yes.
Mrs. Howard?
Yes.
Mrs. Lax?
Yes.
Mr. McAvoy?
Yes.
Mr. Philipchak?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Dr. Cohen?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you. Are there any items in C that need to be separated out? I'd like a motion for items C1 through C7.
So moved.
Mrs. Howard, Mrs. Becker. Is there any discussion? Mrs. Shaw.
C7, let's take a look at. Okay, so this is bid award student transportation services. I'm not sure whether I missed it somewhere, but there's a note here that route VB03 will not be awarded, and I'm just curious as to why it wouldn't be awarded.
Yes, that is correct. At this point, you take a look on page 11 of the agenda. VB03 is the first route that is listed. When you look at the cost differentials for the route, $168 versus $325.
I thought that was significant.
Yeah, sorry. No, thank you. So we're going to put that back out to bid. The only reason that we would not award it in this case is that the first company did not bid on the aid, and we need an aid. So we're going to put this back out to bid and do a quick turnaround and hopefully get a much better price than that second lowest bidder, which I have difficulty calling them the second lowest.
But when you put out a request, aren't there pretty specific parameters that, you include?
Absolutely.
So aren't they saying when they submit a bid that they can meet those requirements?
Yeah, so if you're talking about the low bidder in this case?
Yes.
I believe that it was probably just an omission, and even if it wasn't, we can do better than that second low bid price. And there's no question in our mind, and we vetted that issue, and we're confident that we'll be able to get a bid that's less.
Okay.
Okay?
Then 03 or 05?
Then 03. 03 would be the only one we'd be going back out to bid on.
Oh, okay. Mrs. Becker.
Now, I have a question on C1, the approval of change director for the bus facility. According to the description, the paving of the lots was initially deferred because it was used by the building contractor for staging and delivery, so obviously we didn't want to repave them only to have them use it. I'm just curious, is it possible to determine if the surface was damaged more by the use, that because they were being used by the contractor during the process, was there more damage than when it started?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I'll let
Okay,
you
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
I was
I'll
just-
let you go ahead and answer it.
No, there has been no damage. What this refers to is, there are two sections of parking lot at the facility where the final course, we have deferred it. We've not had them complete that paving because the contractor, now let's understand, there are two different contractors. One who did the site work and one doing the building work.
Right.
The site work contractor, for all intents and purposes, is finished,
Okay,
except for the final course paving on these 2 parking lots. We held them off on doing that final paving because the building contractor still has heavy equipment on that site. And we did not want that final paving to be damaged because of the heavy work that they were doing.
no, I understand that.
So there's been no damage.
I just was curious if the heavy equipment staged on the lot incurred any damage above and beyond what was there before they used it as for staging.
No, there's been no damage at this point. We didn't have the final course work. We haven't had the final paving done.
No,
It's
I
not done yet.
I understand that.
I think, Mrs. Becker, if I could, I think you were
Please.
asking
Because I'm not.
where
doing
they
good.
staged the equipment, did it damage the paving, where they staged it prior to us completing the final course of paving? Is that what I understand?
We had a paved lot, and it was in a certain condition.
Oh, no, it went
No.
away. It was earth.
Ah, okay,
There
thank
was no-
you.
there was no
Thank
paving.
you.
We went from.
I was just imagining it
No.
being used as a staging area for us, and I'm thinking, my God, what did that
No.
do to it?
No.
It's
No.
even worse than it was?
No,
Okay,
We took this back to nature. This was all.
now I understand.
Okay.
It-
There was
it
nothing
was
there
no
to begin
lot.
with.
A picture
The lot
correct.
was
Yes.
1,000
Yes,
words.
okay.
in the clouds.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Visuals.
Mr. McAvoy.
I still have a C1 question,
What?
because I get it,
They damaged it even more.
but why are we liable for $8,600?
It was our decision.
End of. So,
This was to protect
I-
our investment in the site.
But if they want to do what you said, then they pay for it.
As I understand.
I fully understand it, so I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, as I understood what was described here is that there are 2 different vendors. So the one vendor that's doing the site work and the paving, and then there's people that are working on the building, that has nothing to do with the people working on the site. So if the building people damage something, then you get into,
Right.
so that's what I understood you to say, that it made sense to
Correct.
break it up.
And damage could be as simple as with heavy equipment, driving over a freshly paved lot, leaving marks because of the heavy, because of the wheels and the weight of the equipment, leaving markings within the paving. We don't want to go there.
But if it was all one vendor, then I think that's
Then that
where-
would
then
not have
it's
been
not
our
our
issue.
liability.
It would have
They'd
been
have
one
to-
vendor's
Yeah.
coordination issues to deal with on their own.
Yeah.
But because we're dealing with 2 separate contractors, this was a decision that was made to ensure that when that final course goes in,
Nothing else.
that no other equipment is going to be going over to damage it.
I'm not going to the hypothetical that there's going to be damage. Rule out damage. Forget damage. Just the mere fact that all of a sudden now, we have an additional $8,600 to pay for paving that I just don't see why we are paying for it.
Because
If you want, I don't care if it's company A or company B, if you want, we're ready to finish, we're ready to go here, but you don't want to possibly damage our property. So just continue your work, and when you're done working, we'll clean up the mess. That's how I see it. Tell me I'm wrong. Okay, it's somewhere in between.
No, it's not somewhere in between. If I'm understanding what you're saying, putting the onus of the responsibility on the building contractor, we have to make the site available for the contractor to be able to mobilize and do their work.
Right.
That involves bringing in dumpsters, bringing in heavy equipment, and there's a wear and tear on the property for doing that. kind of construction work that takes place, that where it's going over existing parking lots, is never going to result in us getting a new parking lot back because they happen to put wear and tear on it. We didn't want any wear and tear on it.
Okay.
We don't want any wear and tear on that property until we actually get in to use it. So again, as I say, this was our decision to ensure that.
To ensure that when it's all done.
When it's
Right.
done, it's new, it's fresh.
It's undamaged. There's no pivot, no divots in the roadway.
No, we're paying a fee because we're delaying it. It's
Right.
just- It's just like
Right.
when
Right.
Right.
your driveway is the last thing you do with your house
And-
when you're doing patio work, but if the contractors are two different contractors, and you just hold,
Right.
by your choice, hold off doing the driveway.
Right.
And if you have to pay a fee later, that's too bad.
And, you know, just to go back a little bit in terms of the building contractor, if the board will probably recall, if we go back 6 months, that the board had awarded a contract to do the work on the building, which was then delayed because of a bid challenge. And we were delayed about 3 months in being able to proceed with the work. Had that bid challenge, and by the way, the bid challenge was unsuccessful. Had that not occurred, we wouldn't be here and having to worry about how the phasing takes place, because the building work would have been done and the site contractor would have been able to close out as the building was being finished.
But that didn't happen.
But that didn't happen.
Let's go to C2, if I may. Once again, it appears that it's something that the contractor found out after the bid,
Yes.
and therefore, maybe he should have done his homework better?
No, it has nothing to do with that. So I'll reiterate, and we've had this discussion, I think, at the last meeting as well. There are unknown conditions that exist. This has to do with the gymnasium floor.
Oh, not the roof.
No, this is the floor.
Okay, if you're talking about the floor, I
Oh,
thought it
I'm
was
sorry,
roof.
this is the
Because I
roof.
know
I'm
the
sorry,
floor
I
situation-
was looking at something else.
But this
No.
is the tearaway, this is actually the adhesive that
Right.
was designed to prevent tearaway of the roof in a high wind situation. The mechanical fasteners were not going to be sufficient,
Right.
and the engineering, so they re-engineered it to make sure this is
Well,
completely.
you know, adding on, this was an area I was questioning as well. Isn't it incumbent on the bidder to know that, you know, it was a faulty design then? And so they put in a bid for a faulty design?
A contractor will bid based on the specifications that are provided. And I apologize, I was on the wrong pew. It was the same facility, but the wrong part of the project when my initial response. The specifications are not prepared by the contractor, they're prepared by the architect. So that's what the bid is based on. Unless there are questions that come up that are blatant questions resulting from something that just doesn't make any sense in the bid, there's no way to know that something may not work. This is a decision that was, or recommendation that came after the fact, and once the roof is removed and they were doing the new installation, what made the best sense in terms of fastening the insulation to the structure, and this was the best way to deal with it.
So it was poor design by the architect.
Well, again, also, there are unknown conditions there, I'm sorry, the microphone's kind of in the way, that not knowing exactly what's there until the roof is removed, and then being able to see exactly what the substructure is.
So there was an element of unknown conditions here,
Yes.
which
Correct.
I couldn't tell from reading this.
Yes, there's an element of the unknown conditions that
Or, you know, as
warranted.
opposed to, they designed it one way and then realized
No,
that it was insufficient.
no,
Okay.
that's not it. It's the unknown condition aspect here.
Is part of the process or the problem when we get all these change orders, which like obviously continue to be annoying, that these bidders don't have an opportunity to actually see the property before they bid on it? They're bidding it off of a piece of paper?
No, they all have the opportunity to inspect the property. We encourage that. We can't require it, but that's not the issue here. The issue is that when you're talking about unknown conditions, there are circumstances within the structure that are not visible until you begin to tear away what's there. So in the case of the roof, until the old roof was being torn away, you can't really see what's under it. You can see from the gymnasium what the ceiling looks like, and from the exterior of the roof standing on the old roof, you can see what that top looks like, but what's layered in the middle can't be seen until it's removed.
But shouldn't they keep in mind that it's always possible that a high wind might come along and rip off a roof?
Well, I think, Mary, in this case, that was anticipated in the design. They have to build the roof in a certain way.
Right.
That will withstand certain pressures and certain winds.
Right.
But the mechanical fasteners going into the substrate that they were putting the new roof into,
Okay.
that substrate wasn't going to hold the mechanical fasteners to a degree. It wasn't the fastener issue.
Okay.
It wasn't the roof issue. It's the substrate they were putting the fastener
Okay.
into was
So
not going to hold it. And then, so they decided that
So the adhesive was
application-
not being applied because of a possible high wind situation. It was being applied because of the substrate condition.
Right, because
Got
but a high wind could take those mechanical fasteners out of the substrate. So it was a factor of safety, security, integrity of the roof as well.
Okay.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but you're talking about a contractor who does roofs. This is what they do for a living. He knows that he's dealing with a 50-year-old structure. He's probably done high school roofs repeatedly. I'm just surmising that that's the situation. He's read the architectural report. He's seen the blueprints on this. He's been in the building. He's looked up. He's climbed to the roof. He's hopefully taken a crowbar and dug it into the roof.
No, they're not taking a crowbar and digging it into the roof. That is not happening. They can do a visual
Right.
inspection. They cannot penetrate into the structure. Whether it's a roof,
Okay.
a wall, a floor, or anything, it's strictly a visual inspection. And the contractor's not the one who designed the roof. The contractor is building a roof based on what was designed
Right.
to believe the existing substrate, which was not adequate to support the roof.
And so we are stuck with the change order of $23,000 to get it done correctly.
That's correct.
Okay. Can I move on to C4?
Sure.
I'm just projecting, if this is just at the high school, are we going to see these types of bids again for Churchill, Hammersholt, and all of our elementary schools? I know we've talked in technology about a little different, I don't want to go there right now, but I know that this is another dollar and cent sign that's up there. If you want to average it out, maybe it's going to be like $75,000, if it really is the low bid of $60,000. But is this something that we're going to continually see?
Mr. McAvoy, I would expect that as Mr. Leopold completes his assessment of technology infrastructure in the district, we may see some opportunities to move MDFs or IDFs within buildings to make them more serviceable and secure and more practical applications. Mr. Leopold, did you want to speak to the change order? Sure, go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
This is a bid award, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, good evening. I'm going to pass this on to the board members. What we're asking for here is a rewiring of over 140 network cables. Right now, we have a situation where our IDF, which is a data feed termination point for multiple network cables, is in a classroom. We need to move that into a more secure location with climate control and a secure locking mechanism. So as I do my assessment over the next couple of months, we may be able to utilize more of a wireless solution versus the traditional hardwired scenario that we see here in this case. But the issue we have here is not only a matter of security, but we have network jacks, terminations that are on the floor, and what happens is often dirt, wax buildup can seep down into the terminations and affect the performance of the computers. So this is not just network cabling, we have fiber optic cabling that we're moving, video cabling as well. So this is, I won't say this is an isolated incident, but it's something that absolutely needs to get taken care of. However, as we move to more of a mobile solution throughout the district, you'll see less of a need for this quantity of wiring and more of the wireless access points throughout the schools.
Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cohen.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on these C items? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions?
Motion carries.